not alone. You're not alone. You're not alone. You're not alone.
Well, hello, Rick here, Rick Norris. Following up on the series, I should say continuing, kind of following up because I keep deviating from the original premise and theme I was going to pursue, which is actually based on the book you're looking at here, When Heaven Speaks Out Loud, and of course this particular series is named after the book. The miracles in that book are really the point, in the same way that the book of Acts brings and builds faith when people read it. That's the motive here. The Lord wanted me to go ahead and put this stuff out here. I didn't share these things for many years because they're just, it's all very supernatural, and most people have no way of even fielding it. They can't have no reference point because it's just miracle after miracle. That's the way my life has gone. And I wouldn't share these things for years because of the rejection I found out very early, and as I've shared before in other videos, I found out real early in my life that people just aren't ready for the supernatural. There is quite a double standard, though, because if you talk about supernatural, any kind of Eastern mysticism or parapsychological research like ghost hunters, and in real scientific terms, people are open to that. They'll sit and watch that kind of, spirituality, quote unquote, all day on shows like, whatever, the old Oprah and, some of these talk shows and stuff. But the minute you take those same miracles, or even more radical miracles, and put them in a Christian context, they'll go off at you and say that you're a whack job, you're just crazy because, it doesn't fit their, what they want to believe. Now, what you're looking at here is the front cover of the first book, in Restoration, Preparing for His Fullness. And this book is a teaching book. It's kind of prophetic. It's a hard word, kind of like if someone like Keith Green or David Wilkerson or Billy Graham wrote a book that was, intended to call us all on the carpet. And so it's not tickling your ears. And God is going to move in fullness here on the earth shortly. He's going to begin because gross darkness has covered the people. And of course, Isaiah says that's when we will rise, shine, and our light will come. Now, the Lord wanted us to be able to tell time on what He was up to, and that's why He put this in Genesis right here. It says, God said, let there be lights in the firmament of heaven, to divide the day from the night, and to let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years. And let them be for lights in the firmament of heaven, to give light upon the earth. And it was so. So He wanted us to know. In Jesus' day, the wise men, say what you want about the Chaldee scholars, those magi from the east, they were astronomers. They were Chaldee astronomers, and the Bible calls them wise. Well, how would you like the Bible to call you wise, from generation to generation? So they had done some homework. They knew what was going on by watching the stars. Well, we in the modern world have lost touch with all of that. And during those agrarian ages, people were looking up. They could see, too, a lot better than we can. See the sky better because the sky wasn't so polluted and everything. That's a lot to go into right here. But so the wise men were wise. Well, why does it call them wise? Well, they were watching the signs in the heavens. And when they lined up the stellar, and I'm not talking astrology, that's a cult. Astrology is a perversion of astronomy that came later, actually came early with maybe even as early as Nimrod, but I won't get into that either. But the point is, astronomy is like a giant clock. What God created up there, when He created the heavens and the earth, when He spoke of the firmament, meaning the planets, stars, and everything, He said, "Let them be for times and signs and seasons." Signs, times, and seasons, and that's what He was referring to. We can tell the times and the seasons by the stars. Now, when I say by the stars, I also mean the planets, of course. We've lost our ability to interpret those signs in the heavens because we lost the Hebrew calendar. We lost many of the ancient knowledge of how that all works up there, and we trust more in our analytical and scientific theories and different ideas about, and it really, you'd be surprised how much conjecture and guessing, and we take it as, gospel from the NASA and many of the other government and some commercial now, especially now, commercial astronomical organizations and companies. They're just not being completely straight up with us. That's all there is to it, and it's starting to come to light. Now, these graphics that I'm putting up are actually, obviously a lot of this is from the weather cameras, aviation cameras, and satellite cameras, of course, and they have many different filters: ionic, photonic, electronic, a lot of different, and IR, infrared, and that kind of thing. And I'm going to come back through and delineate, break these down so you know what you're looking at. Just giving you a taste of where we're going. This is really astonishing what's happening in the heavens. And it has always happened. You start doing some homework, you find out it's always happened right before a major biblical event. And in fact, there are some researchers out there that have done what the wise men did. They went back to the Hebrew calendar and went back, and a lot of people don't realize, but that whole our stellar patterns can be run backwards. They're it's like a Swiss clock. You can run it backwards and line up, if you have a historical lineup documented, all the way back. I mean, we have those on petroglyphs and on cuneiforms and all kinds of artifacts that go back, 4,000 years and more, 5,000 years by some standards. I mean, depending on which discipline you want to believe. But the point is, that stuff's been, you go back and look at the lineups, the stellar constellations, not the zodiac. The stellar constellations in certain positions at certain times, and then line it up with the Hebrew calendar, and you start finding out stuff that'll blow your mind. It's astonishing. And much of what is in the Bible, the big events, the really big events in the Bible, were documented in the patterns of the stars and what we now call Kepler's laws of planetary motion, that kind of thing. Now, I've come back to this graphic in order to break it down for you. Really, believe it or not, that is our solar system, and inner solar system, and that is the amount of stellar, I should say, asteroids, space rocks, meteors, comets, and space junk that surrounds our little planet. It's very busy out there, and what this video is about is that very thing. We're already busy, like you're seeing here, and this is very recent by most standards, and it shows that we have entered a debris field, and it's you can imagine if we were already that busy out there, that dense in what they call NEOs. NEOs are near-Earth objects, and these are not really NEOs, but it gives you an idea of just how much debris there is out there. Now, this graphic speaks pretty much for itself, but it's important to notice the name at the bottom there. That's Jim Bridenstine, and he is the chief of NASA. Now, the reason I'm putting this up here before I go any further is because there's so much conspiracy stuff out there, and stuff that's not really based on data. It's based on conjecture, and it's not scientific, basically. So I wanted to make sure that you realize that when I talk about we've entered a debris field, that increases our chances of an NEO, or which is same thing as an asteroid usually. It can be a large meteor, I suppose, at times. But so usually when you say NEO, you mean an asteroid. And here he is. It says, expect a major asteroid to strike in your lifetime. That was a quote from the chief of NASA. So I want to put that in perspective. That was last year, May of last year, in Washington at the Planetary Defense Conference. So this is, this is really happening, folks, and you need to take me serious. I just wanted to put a qualifier in there. When the head of NASA actually comes clean with information like that, it's important to look at. And quite frankly, NASA is, like I said earlier, there are people in the astronomical community who, equate the initials on NASA as never a straight answer, because they have, I think they're afraid of the public panicking. So they're not letting some of this information out. But it's all biblical. The Lord said that this was going to happen. An example, of course, scriptural example, is in Revelation. Of course, Revelation mentions similar things throughout. And Matthew, Luke, Mark, Joel, Isaiah, many Old and New Testament references to what's coming in this regard. Obviously, this, I go ahead and read it. It says, and the stars of heaven fell into the earth as a fig tree casteth off her untimely figs when she is shaken by a mighty wind. That is mostly the Elizabethan English, obviously, but you get the point. It's not ambiguous. This graph here pretty much speaks for itself as well. We have this is a PHA graph on pH. Quite honestly, I can't remember if it's projected or possible or probable. Asteroids, hazardous asteroids, but that's what it stands for, and it's not ambiguous as to what they're trying to say. They're going to be NEOs. They're coming in, and they're coming in close, and they're showing what's happened in the past here in this graphic. And the graph starts before that 500 mark. So it's more like 200, from 200 to 2,000 plus NEOs, that is asteroids, that just missed us from 2001 and just prior to 2019. That's definitely exponential increase any way you look at it. It just keeps going up, and I'm going to go into why this is happening, why we have so much, why the comets, asteroids, meteors, space rocks, and all this stuff, and even planets are being drawn to our little solar system, and it's becoming common knowledge in the astronomical community. This picture is a recent actual strike where you had either it would be considered a meteorite, I believe, in this case, but it's hard to know these days. There's so much junk out there coming at us. But this was in the impact zone, you can see the people just gathered around it in rather shock and awe. So it's, there's a lot of this stuff isn't even reported for obvious reasons. By the way, the proper name for that strike is really impact, and I don't guess that matters. You get the point. What you're looking at here is we have, satellites that watch the sun. That little circle in the very middle is the sun, and they have an obfuscator there so that we can observe what's coming in around the sun. This satellite, I believe this is Core 2. Anyway, so we have different SDO. We have different satellites out there. This particular shot was captured. It is a public domain because it's a government camera on the satellite. But this was sent over by my old friend Steve Olson over at WSO back in the day. Anyway, so what you're looking at is not a time lapse. That's more than one object passing the sun on, I believe it's on 2 different occasions, but they see this kind of stuff all the time now, and no one's reporting it. It's really amazing. Now, what's happening is we have an interloper, a system of planets, if you will. Well, they are. Some of them are planets that have come in and with this area in space. They have I think what they call a concentric orbit. I won't go into all that, but it's like a giant magnet. It's about 7 times our size, and it's a stellar core. It's mostly iron, and it's the Bible calls it the fiery red dragon of old. We just assume that he's talking about Satan there, but it's a sign in the heavens. That's not to say that it's not also a metaphor for the adversary himself, but let's take a look at Revelation 12, and you'll get a better understanding of what I'm talking about. In Revelation 12, that's the sign in September of 2017, September 23rd, there was a sign in the heavens that was so great and so overwhelmingly important. No one seemed to know it, though. It was astonishing. Just an absolutely monolith. It can't be overstated how important this sign was. It's only happened once in all of history, and it'll never happen again. And what it took, in the planetary sense, Kepler's laws of planetary motion, and all of those things that had to happen. For example, Jupiter went, which interesting enough is the king planet, went backwards, that is, went retrograde, and lodged in the belly of Virgo, which is the Virgin constellation. And again, this is not astrology, this is astronomy. These signs were put up there by God for us to know what time it is. Anyway, I'll break it down. You'll understand in a minute here. So the sign that we're talking about, of course, is in Revelation 12. And it says, it reads, and a great sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, the moon at her feet, and a crown of 12 stars on her head. And she was pregnant and cried out in pain as she was about to give birth. Then another sign appeared in heaven, an enormous red dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns on its heads. Its tail swept 1/3 of the stars out of the sky and flung them to the earth. The dragon stood in front of the woman who was about to give birth, so that it might devour her child the moment it was born. She gave birth to a son, a male child, who will rule the nations with an iron scepter. Now, I need to break this down for you. It's just astonishing. It really cries out the glory of God. This is impossible what happened. Just for starters, Jupiter, you see it there, just below, this is just prior to the sign as it moves into the sign. Jupiter had to go retrograde. That means it had to go backwards in its orbit. And if that wasn't enough, it had to stop in the belly of Virgo, which of course is the Virgin in the prophecy. And so Jupiter is called the king planet. It goes into the belly of Virgo and sits there for exactly 42 weeks. Well, anyone with any children knows that that's the exact perfect duration of time for gestation of a baby in the womb. Exactly. So that's just for starters. But the constellation there just above Virgo is Leo, and that has 9 stars. And they had to have 3 wandering stars. The ancients called the planets wandering stars, and they had to have 3 of those come in. One was Venus, and one was Mars, and Mercury was there. Also, Regulus, you see, is a regular part of the Leo constellation. But so what it took for that, the timing of this, first of all, you had too many variables. It was absolutely impossible. And nevertheless, the sign was needed, and God put it up there for us to know we were starting a countdown. Now, there's a lot of conjecture on what that countdown means. I have my opinions, and different people have different opinions of whether it initiates a countdown or not. Personally, I like everyone, I have an opinion, and I'm of the opinion, theory, if you will, that it actually starts the time of Jacob's trouble. And I could go into that. There's a lot in this particular scripture and that whole section in Revelation 12 that I'm not even going to be able to go into in the time that I have here. Suffice it to say that I think that if that's true about Jacob's trouble, then that was 2017. So we're already 3 years into this thing. So, and that would explain all the chaos and in the streets and the looting and destruction and murder that's going. Hell is belching out its army onto the earth. Satan knows his time is short, and he's not happy, but he's just going to go into his destructive, scorched earth policy. He just wants to kill as many people as he can because it hurts God, before he gets incarcerated. As I continue, I'll just put this graphic up that shows the debris that's come in with this system I'm talking about. Simultaneously, that fiery red dragon that's mentioned there is alluding to that interloper system that has come in. It's got about 30 names because it's been coming in and again in a concentric orbit for millennia, and some people say it's a 3,600-year orbit duration. Some say it's more, but the fact of the matter is a guy named Zechariah Sitchin conjectured on the number system of the Sumerians, who were the oldest culture we have in recorded history, and they talked about this thing coming in. And their number system has no zeros. So when it came time to calculate the duration of this orbit of this thing that's causing all this havoc on the earth and in the heavens, he threw in an extra zero by conjecture. He guessed at it. And the research of Gil Broussard, who has better data than anyone out there, I don't agree with some of his theology because he's gone back to the Hebraisms and made them the priority. But I believe he's a believer, and he knows what's going on. But he's a brilliant, really a genius as far as data goes on this thing and quite a few other things. But he found that he ran, if you will, those numbers. He's a mathematician, physicist, astronomer, and he ran the numbers and found that it lines up perfectly with 14 of the 15 now, I think, of the largest, most dramatic miracles in the Bible that all line up with this thing's concentric orbit when it comes in. And people say, well, if that was true, why haven't we heard more about it? Where are the reports in the historical astronomical records? Well, they're there. They're all there. That's how he found out. He did his homework. But he found out that Zecharia Sitchin had guessed at it, and he took one of the zeros out of the 3,600 year orbit and found out that it comes in about every 360 years. And again, people say, well, if that's the case, how come we haven't had more reports? And that's because it doesn't always come in close. And every time it has come in close, it wreaks havoc, and we get these dramatic things, which lined up with all of those big biblical miracles. I mean, the big ones. And name them. And so anyway, God uses all that stuff out there, not just for signs, but for influences when his timing's right. It's amazing. The more you study this kind of thing, the more you see the hand of God and in the sciences and how the different disciplines and areas of scientific research, vindicate and authenticate the prophetic scriptures and vice versa. All that I've been sharing with you is to let you know that what's about to hit the earth is not just, the prophecies about the Ezekiel 38 war and the economic crash and global, whatever you want to call it, reset or what. We're going to be having things happen on the earth. The Revelation also talks about the fiery mountain and the asteroids that are coming down. Wormwood is one of them, and the fiery mountain is one of them. Those are both in Revelation. Look it up, and they're going to hit. Those are not going to miss. And truth be known, NASA has known about this for a very long time. I mean, you see this article here, that's very old. And so they've known. They triangulated it. That's why they sent the Voyager and Pioneer probes out. They found this thing perturbing the other planets. They knew it was there, and they can't see it because it's a brown dwarf. And I won't go into what that means, but you need infrared to even see it. But anyway, they triangulated it. They know it's there. Even Michael Brown at Caltech last year said, or year before said, yeah, it's there. We know it's there. We just can't see it unless and the only little side note, the only telescope in the world that can see it is, or one of the only ones, is owned by the Vatican, and it's named Lucifer. That's real too. Look that up. Why in the world would they call that thing Lucifer? That's astonishing. Never a dull moment, right? Well, anyway, so, and NASA's known for years, and they've been covering this stuff up, and that's been proven again and again by the amateur astronomers around the world, but nobody's listening, and there's so much conspiracies on the conspiracies that people just, their eyes glass over and they don't want to listen. And with all the, that's been one of my pet peeves, is so many people out there with so much garbage, that, when the truth comes down the pike, people just go, oh yeah, another one of those. They can't see the truth because the waters are too muddy. And one of the things I really can't go into in this particular video that's important is the influences of this interloper system that has come in has influenced our sun, and it is in turn nearly destroying our magnetosphere. Our magnetosphere is not able to filter all the charged particles, and the charged particles go into our core and heat up the core. And the magma, of course, it's a liquid, heated liquid. It has to expand, and that's why we have had radical, I mean truly radical, exponential increase in volcanoes and especially earthquakes. This next graphic, of course, shows the exponential increase, stopping in about the middle, or less than the early part of 2015. But you get an idea. It's really leaping now. It's exponentially increasing, and I'll show. Let me show a graphic here of the actual inner workings of the what they call the asthenosphere, which is just the magma ocean, the liquid rock underneath us that the continental plates float on. You see those bumps and rises. They're called horns in the volcanism circles. and that's where your volcanoes would be quite often, because your pressure comes up into the crust, and that's where we get our volcanoes. But we also, it's moving around all the time and moving the plates all the time, and when the plates move, that's when we get our increase in seismic activity as well. Simultaneously, there is influences, electromagnetic influences from this giant metal wrecking ball, if you will. And it's wreaking havoc on the right at ground level. You see on your left the graphic there, 686 is the reading for AB, UV rating, level rather. And on the right you have one that's really astonishing, and that's 23 on the C. Now C, UVC, ultraviolet C shouldn't even, it should always be 0 at ground level, and here it is at 23. It's because, again, our atmosphere, our magnetosphere, everything's being, it's just being pummeled by the electromagnetic influences of this system that has come in. Now, none of this is, fear-mongering or any of that. For if you're a believer, you have nothing to fear. This is just to make you see that the prophecies all line up with science and vice versa. It's really astonishing how precise everything is. And you have a spectator, free ticket. Now, it's probably not common knowledge, but it should be, that when a scientist discovered something, he puts out what's called a white paper, and that is, an article about his findings, and it is judged by his peers, and so it's funny, NASA, like I said, they've been covering up and saying, what you're seeing in your telescope is a sun flare. Or I've even heard them say moon flare, and there's no moon dog, and there's no such thing. That's what they're called, moon dogs. It's like a reflection. The sun dog is a reflection, and they're covering some of this stuff up, and it's horrible. Now, once in a while, NASA will put out a white paper. And, let me see. I think I may have one of those for you to see. Oh, yeah, I do. Here's one here. This is definitely NASA. But I digress. I'm not saying everybody at NASA is bad. Hardly. And not even remotely. Most of the people there are very brilliant people, but, if you go up against the systems, just like the AMA or the CIA, FBI, any of the government agencies nowadays, if you go up against the status quo, you could lose everything, because they'll get slandered, blacklisted, and maybe even cut loose, right? Anyway, so I do digress. The earthquakes indicated on this particular graphic show what's happening. The core, that's unprecedented. That's all record setting right there. the most activity in recorded history. So pretty much says it. I've gone very long here. I'm going to wrap this thing up. I know this is a radical departure from what I normally do on my channel, but the urgency of the hour has again compelled me to share some of this stuff. I know this is a hard time for a lot of people with social distancing and, you know, all the BS that's going on out there. And just, you know, the main emphasis I'm trying to put out is that we just need to be praying, you know. He has allowed some of the schemes and plots of the evil ones, what Paul calls the rulers of darkness of this world, to pull the wool over everybody's eyes. It's astonishing. We're in that time of great deception. But he says, you know, if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray, and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, I will then hear from heaven, and I will forgive their sin and heal their land. You know, we have a little window of reprieve in front of us here, to which, you know, in which we can facilitate the harvest and what's about to happen during what's happening on the earth. This is not a time for fear or acquiescence. This is a time for us to be bold and step out. I mean, if we really believe what we believe, we'll step out and be that voice and that light in the darkness, and not be afraid of the repercussions. For most of history, you know, the church knew, people that became Christians knew that it would probably cost them their life, but they went forward because they had an encounter with the living God. And so it's time for the church to wake up and realize where we are. This is our finest hour approaching. Most of we got Chinese believers that are praying for America because we've been so complacent and so comfortable for so long. We've missed our calling. We just want to watch TV and go to church and, you know, appease our religious conscience and run home and watch the game. That's life. It's all about comfort and convenience. Well, I'm going to close for now. The last few graphics were both my books and some of the singles at my website. There's when you get to the website, it's just a series of outreach singles there. But if you want worship, just straight up worship, just scroll down. There's a bunch of albums down there, and a new double album of worship down there too. Just, you know, the main thing is for us to be praying, as I said, and you take an hour each day at least. You know, that's why the Lord asked Peter. He said, "Peter, are you sleeping? Couldn't you wait 1 hour? Couldn't you pray for even 1 hour?" And if you've seen any of the other videos or read the book When Heaven Speaks Out Loud, which is the name of this series, you know, I show plainly that if people who are praying in the Spirit for an hour get breakthrough, they get miracles, and how simple it is for us to break through and we don't get it. Again, the first book is When Heaven Speaks Out Loud. I wrote this to build up people's faith. You know, I don't. If I could give it away free, I would. But go check it out. It will bolster your faith for sure. And the first book is called Restoration: Preparing for His Fullness. It's a didactic book, teaching book, prophetic teaching book, really calling us on the carpet. And especially leadership, and to get us ready and able-bodied spiritually to deal with what's about to hit the planet. A very important book for that. Check them out. They're on Amazon, Kindle, Amazon publishers, and to be continued. And I'll get this up on YouTube as fast as I can. And I'm also on Vimeo, and of course, my website, again, is ricknorrismusic.net. I'm a recording artist by trade, if you like blues where it meets rock and roll and gospel, that kind of thing. R&B, that's what I do. Check it out. And God bless you all. And My next video will probably go back to a music video or something on that order. Okay? God bless y'all. Bye.
You're not alone.